Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Let's get started. So we are going to be taking up the study guide for scientific methods. And by now you should have watched the lecture recordings for lecture 1 on your own. And if you didn't have a chance to do that yet, that's okay. But I do encourage you to do that, before the end of this week, because we do move along quite quickly. Next week we'll be starting lecture 2, so you don't want to have too much of a backlog of these things building up. So here we go. For the scientific method, you can get this study guide on eCentennial. Maybe I will quickly post a link in the chat box for you in case you wasn't sure where to get it. Give me 1 second. Okay, so I posted a link in the chat box to where you can download this document. All right, so first question here, list 7 characteristics of a living organism. Okay, so for living things, they all tend to share a set of common characteristics. So first one would be they exhibit order. Okay, so example, there is some kind of symmetry to them, right? There is some kind of organization to the organism, right? We talk about the hierarchy of organization in lecture. We're starting with the atoms. They're able to come together to form the molecules, which then becomes macromolecules, and then the organelles in the cell, and so on and so forth. So all the way from the molecular structure to the entire organisms, there are some complexity to it. There is some kind of order associated with it. That would be one of the 7 characteristics of living things. Can somebody give me another one, please? Another characteristic of living things.
Homeostasis.
Homeostasis, that's correct. The ability to maintain homeostasis. Ability to maintain homeostasis. Okay, and homeostasis is essentially an internal balance, right? An internal balance. So to maintain internal balance, there are 2 ways to achieve this. We can do it either through physiological mechanism, right, or through behavioral mechanism. So if it's really cold outside, you might shiver. Shivering brings your body temperature back up, right? And shivering is something that your body does for you. That would be considered as physiological. What would be an example of a behavioral mechanism if it's really cold outside? Yeah, go ahead, please. Jisung?
Thank you. An example of a behavioral mechanism would be, I guess, you wearing a sweater.
Yeah, that would be perfect. Exactly. Thank you. Yeah, so behavior is something that you do, right? That you purposely do, deliberately do, whereas physiological is more something that is autonomic, something that your body does for you. Okay. And another one. Okay, Mohammed, right in the chat box, reproduction. That is correct. Reproduction. So all living things would reproduce Suat, is that how you pronounce it? Okay, thank you. Thank you for clarifying. So reproduction is another characteristics, and all living things, they reproduce their own kind, right? So, in the lecture I said, polar bear is gonna produce polar bear babies, and so on and so forth. Okay, I have a couple more suggestions coming from the chat box. Very good. The need for energy. Okay, so either you are a consumer, which means you consume other organisms for energy, or you might be a producer, like a plant that produces their own food by using the sun's energy. But either way, you're gonna have to have some kind of requirement for energy. Okay, Tamara said growth and development. That's correct as well. Growth and development. Okay, so we look very different now than when we were a baby, right? We continue to grow and get bigger, and then we develop muscles and we develop skills and so on and so forth. But of course, not everything has to be identical in the juvenile form than the adult form. Something like a butterfly, right? In the lecture notes, I said, they go through very drastic changes in their life cycle, right? We call that metamorphosis, right? Another one is responds to environmental stimulus. Okay, so a stimulus is basically some kind of changes in the environment, right? I use the example of Venus flytrap, but it doesn't have to be like a plant. Like we respond to stimulus, right? Like if you hear a loud bang in the kitchen or something, you instinctively would take a look, right? That's a response to stimulus, and very often the response to stimulus is something that your body does to help maintain the homeostasis, right? Dropping a temperature, that's a stimulus, and your body respond by, shivering, I said, right? If it's the opposite, if it's too hot, you will sweat. So all these are kind of, interconnected. I don't want you to think of them as like, separate things. And finally, the last one is, another person mentioned it, that the ability to adapt, and evolve. Very good. So I don't remember if I mentioned this in the lecture recording, but it's important to remember when it comes to evolution, individuals do not evolve, right? Population does. Okay. So let me just give you a brief example to illustrate this. Let's say we have these hypothetical organisms. Okay, they look like little ovals, and we're going to give them some legs. Okay, so these organisms, they come in two forms. Okay, some of them have no fur on them. Okay, others, they are a little bit hairy. Okay? So you might ask, well, how come some have furs and some don't? Well, in a population, there are variations caused by genetic differences, right? Just like no two person is going to look the same. Some people have, darker skin color. Some people have lighter skin color. Some people have connected earlobes. Others have suspended earlobes, right? So all these different traits that we have boils down to our different genetic makeup. So in this particular organism, maybe there is a genetic makeup that caused some of them to have these fur and some of them do not. So let's say there is a sudden climate change, okay, very severe climate change that causes something like an ice age. So it becomes very, very cold. Not very, very cold for like a day or a week. We're talking about an extended period of time, okay, maybe hundreds and hundreds of years. It becomes very cold, right? And so in this very cold environment, which of these organisms are better adapted for the cold, right? Obviously, it's going to be the ones that have the fur, right? And so these other naked ones, we'll call them, they start to die off. Okay, and the ones with the fur, they are doing better. They're not really affected by the cold, and so they will be able to mate and reproduce and make more of these guys with the fur. Okay, the hairy ones. Okay, you might have one or two of these left behind. Maybe they found a cave to live in or something. But for the most part, the population will now have more individuals with the fur, right? So over many, many, many generations, you end up with a population that exhibit a trait, the fur, that allows them to be better adapted for the environment. So the entire population evolves, okay? It's not the individual that evolves. It's not like this one that doesn't have a fur all of a sudden is able to grow fur because of the cold environment. It doesn't work like that, right? To have the fur, you have to have the genetic predisposition for that trait, okay? Now, what happens if the very cold era has ended and now, like, I don't know, like a volcano erupted and it becomes super hot, right? So now in this new environment, okay, then all of a sudden the ones with the furs, they might overheat and not survive as well. So they start to die off. And then the ones that are naked will now be able to reproduce more and have more kids, offsprings, and over time, the population will once again shift back to more of the naked ones. Okay, so it's important to understand that the traits that are evolved is only suitable for a particular environment. It's not necessarily like the best version of the organism, right? If the environment changes, then later on you might need a separate trait in order for the population to be more adapted again. Please go ahead. Someone has a question. I saw someone put their hand up in the Zoom thing. Okay, maybe later. There's another question in the chat. The newborns will evolve and become naked. Oh, not really like that, okay? It's the parents are the naked ones, so all their kids will be naked, so to speak, okay? And then the ones that are furry, because they have the furry trait, then all their kids will have the furry one. It's not like this. It's not like the furry ones will give birth to naked ones because it's hot. It doesn't work like that, okay? You only inherit what the parents give you, right? So if the parents are the hairy ones, then they will give birth to hairy ones as well, okay? And because the hairy ones were able to survive better in the cold environment, that's why over time the population is going to be comprised of more of the hairy ones. So, why do we care about these things? To give you a very real example of what's going on in the world right now, if you think about like the COVID virus, right? Okay, so let's say this is the COVID-19 virus, and let's say, it infects a person and then it starts to divide, and then you have many of these, and then it's spread to another person and so on and so forth. But, thanks to vaccines, now people are able to make antibodies, which are these Y-shaped proteins. You just have to believe me, they are Y-shaped, and they're able to attach to the virus and neutralize them so you don't get too sick. Okay. However, because the virus is able to replicate really quickly, they tend to accumulate mutations along the way when they do this. So just by chance, random chance, maybe there is going to be a mutation that allows them to change the surface of the virus. Okay, change it just a little bit so that the antibodies that your immune system makes no longer recognize the virus, and therefore they are able to evade your immune system. So this one with the new mutation will now be able to keep on replicating, right, in your body, despite the fact that you have some immunity, and all the ones that comes from this one will have the same advantageous mutation. And now these virus comes out of you and infect another person, right? That person might have the same antibody from the vaccine, but it no longer protects them because of this difference. And before you know it, many people in the population will now be infected with this new variant. Okay, and that's what it means on the news when they say there is a new variant of concern. It means that the virus has mutated, and now you have a new strain that no longer gets attacked by your previous immunity. Does that make sense? So that's like, evolution in real time, right? And of course, something that's very concerning because the virus is always going to be able to evolve, and we always going to have to keep up with perhaps new vaccinations or new intervention to stay safe. Regardless, these are the 7 characteristics of living things. Do we have any question before we move on? All right. Next question. Complete the following chart about induction and deduction. So induction is basically going from specific to general. Now, let me just write that down for you. So derive a general statement from many specific observations. Okay. So like you make one observation, you make another observation, and then another one, and then another one. And then you take all these things and then you make a general statement. Let me give you an example. Okay. I take my kids to like Dollarama sometimes and I let them, buy 1 or 2 things. So one time my older daughter, she chose like a package of eraser. Okay. But then it doesn't have a price on it. So she asked me, Baba, how much is this does this cost? And I'm like, you know what? Why don't you try to figure it out by looking at other stuff on the wall? So she looked at the pencils and she was like, okay, this is $3. And I was like, what about the scissors? And she's like, oh, that's $3 as well. What about the glue sticks? Which is $3. And then all of a sudden, she like had a moment of realization. She was like, oh, so everything on this section, in this section, is $3? I was like, that's right. That is induction. That's inductive reasoning, right? You make many small observations, and then you come up with a broad general statement. Does that make sense? Okay, so an example of that would be, let's just keep it simple. Trees are made up of cells. Okay, and then I'll make another statement like cats are made up of cells. Birds are made up of cells. Okay, and then so on and so forth, right? So what is my general statement here? Help me out. What is a general broad statement that I should write?
Living things.
Yeah, living things. What about living things?
Living things are made up of cells.
That's right. Living things are made up of cells. All living things are made up of cells. Okay. Sorry, thank you for putting your hands up, guys, but sometimes I'm not going to be able to see it right away. So I apologize if I don't call on your name. Kamara said in the chat box, induction is the production of an enzyme in response to. Yeah, that's like in a different context. Okay, so in the context of what we're talking about here, inductive reasoning is going from specific cases to general cases. But you would be right in another context if we were talking about enzymes. So we are good with this? Okay, please ask questions if you have any. Next one is deduction. Deduction is the opposite. Okay, it is taking a general statement, applying a general statement to a specific case. Okay, so general statement, and then you're applying it to different situations. So like, back to my example of the Dollarama, after she figure out, oh, everything in this section is $3, and then that's the induction, then the deduction, the deductive reasoning would be, well, since I took the eraser from this section, it must also be $3. Okay, so that's deduction. Now, is she right? Is she wrong? Well, I mean, we don't know until we get to the cashier, right? Okay, so deductive reasoning does not guarantee a correct prediction. It doesn't guarantee a correct answer, right? It just gives you a way to come up with a prediction, with a tentative answer. All right, and you will need to do more observation, do more testing in order to figure out whether your deductive reasoning is sound, is correct. So in another example over here, you know, those little furry guys that I make up earlier. So let's say they really do exist and we found one of them. And so an example of deductive reasoning would be like, this furry thing, okay, furry thing is a living thing. Therefore, it is made up of cells. Do you understand? That's the difference between induction and deduction. Do we have any questions on that?
No, thanks.
Okay, thank you, Valerie. All right, fantastic. Moving on. List the steps in scientific process. So the scientific process is the process that we use to test our tentative answer, right? To test our hypothesis. If we come up with a tentative answer for some of our questions, we then can design experiment to see whether it's correct or not. Go ahead, Francisca. You have a question? You have your hand up. Francisca, yeah, you have a question? I saw your hand up in the chat. Okay. Yeah. So let's continue then. List the steps in a scientific process. So in this process, we have starting with observations. Observations. Okay, so that's part of discovery science, right? Making observations, and then you might ask questions. Why are things the way they are? Then you answer your own question. Hypothesis. Okay, so a hypothesis is a tentative answer to your question. Okay. It might not be correct. It could be wrong, where you're just doing some people call it like an educated guess. All right. Now, what are the two criteria for hypothesis? Does anybody remember from the lecture? For hypothesis to be valid, it must be what and what?
Testable.
It must be testable. Good. And what's the other condition?
Falsifiable.
Falsifiable. Very good. Which means it, yeah, thank you. That means it could be potentially wrong, right? Potentially wrong. By the way, like I know some of you are joining us for the first time today because of late registration. So in case you didn't know, you were supposed to watch the recordings of the lectures before the tutorial. That's why I'm going through some of these stuff. You know, not into great details, because the great details is in the recordings. This is more of like a review, more of like a summary of the actual lecture. So if you do need to watch the whole thing, you can find that on eCentennial. And you know, if you can't find things, just email me. I'll gladly show you where they are. So the hypothesis, right, answers the questions, and you want to make prediction. Right? Like, if I'm correct, if my hypothesis is correct, then I should expect this to happen. If I'm wrong, then this might happen. The next one is the experiment. Okay, we're going to go ahead and set up an experiment to test our prediction, to test our hypothesis, and we can make a conclusion. Okay, so that's the scientific process. And sometimes after the conclusion, you're going to have to refine your hypothesis and then try again. And, it's often a cyclical process. Okay, give an example of a non-testable hypothesis. Anybody want to help me out here? Non-testable hypothesis.
I have one.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay. Plants that grow under sunlight grow. Wait, I'm sorry. Let me just construct this variable. Sorry.
No worries. Thank you for trying. Anyone else?
Religious beliefs.
That's right. So non-testable hypothesis includes things like opinion, religious belief, superstitious stuff. So can I have a concrete example? Like, give me a statement. Give me a hypothesis. That would be non-testable.
Christians believe that when you pass away, you'll go to like heaven or hell.
Yeah. I mean, that's not testable. Like, there's no way of verifying that, right? Very good. Or the example I give in class would be something like this, right? Like, okay, biology is more interesting. Than, I don't know, math. Okay. If you ask me if that's true or not, yeah, I think it's true. But if you ask your math teacher, they might think it's not true. But it doesn't matter because it's an opinion. There's no way to test an opinion, right? It is what it is. There's no right or wrong. So that would be a bad hypothesis, would be an invalid hypothesis. Okay. An example of a non-falsifiable hypothesis. Anybody?
Yeah, let me try.
Sure, please.
Chocolate is always better than vanilla.
Chocolate is always better than vanilla.
Vanilla.
Okay. That is also a non-testable one because again, it's
Non-testable.
similar to
Okay.
this situation, right? You'll be
Okay.
correct. What about a non-falsifiable one? Anyone else want to try? Anyone else want to try?
I
Mhm.
have one.
Please.
Plants need chlorophyll to grow or develop.
Mhm.
That's it.
Okay, plants needs chlorophyll to grow. Now, I don't know if that's falsifiable. To be falsifiable, it means that it could potentially be wrong, right? And the statement, plant needs chlorophyll to grow, actually could potentially be wrong. For example, if I remove all the chlorophyll from a leaf and then I let it sit in the sun, okay, I can observe it. There are two outcomes. It could either live or it could die, right? So if it lives, then that means I'm wrong. My hypothesis is wrong. But if it dies, then my hypothesis is correct, right? So as long as there are two potential outcomes, right, that either shows you're correct or you're wrong, then it's an okay hypothesis. All right. So good try. Thank you. Maybe I give you one then. Okay. Non-falsifiable hypothesis. Okay. Growing up, my parents like to tell me this. If you work hard, if you work hard enough, you then you will get A+, okay, in English. Okay, that's what they told me because I wasn't doing very well in English, right? So then, I came home and I didn't do well in English, and I told my parents I work hard enough. I work very hard, and then I still didn't get A+. Okay, and then my parents would be like, well, that's because you didn't work hard enough. If you work even harder, then you will be okay. So then I came back again. I still don't get good grades. I say I work harder already, but it's still not good. And then they would say, you still have to work even harder, right? So you see, there's no way of proving them wrong because every time I don't do well enough, their counter argument is, well, that's because you didn't work hard enough. If you just work harder, right? So there's no way of counteracting this statement. There's no way of proving it wrong. That's why something like this would be a bad hypothesis. Do you understand? Okay. So hopefully, you have a good understanding of what non-testable and what not falsifiable means. Okay, moving on. Give two examples of primary sources and 2 examples of secondary sources. So primary sources are basically sources that are directly from or we can say first-hand information. First-hand information. Okay, directly from the person who is conducting the experiment, for example, directly from the person who is experiencing the event. Okay, so these are considered as primary sources because it's from first-hand information. They tend to be very accurate. They tend to be reflective of what's really going on. So Valerie said biography. That's correct. That's an example of a primary source. Okay, if the person is writing their own biography, it could be a peer-reviewed journal. So in the scientific community, you can't just publish anything you want. Okay, if in the like the official journals, if you want to publish your result, other experts in the field has to look at your result and give you criticism, gives you suggestions, and make sure that your work is actually properly conducted before you are allowed to publish it. Okay, so those tend to be more accurate. They tend to be more reliable in terms of sources. Okay, another one would be reporter reporting live from a scene. Reporting live from a scene. Okay, so let's say there is a scene of accident, car accident, and the reporter is describing to you what's going on at the scene. That would be considered as a primary source. What about secondary sources? Can anybody give me some examples of secondary sources, please? What are they?
Social media, like blogging outlets.
Sure. So there's blogs, right? Anybody can post a blog, right? Especially nowadays, there's a lot of like influencer, right? So you don't know if they have other motives in promoting a certain products, so that might not be very accurate. You know, even books could be secondary source if it's not first-hand account, right? If it's someone else's summarizing the foundings of another person. Your textbook, for example, is a secondary source, right? When people tell you DNA is a genetic material, that person did not come up with that discovery, right? It's a regurgitation of someone else's work, right? So that's considered as secondary sources. Yeah, reviews of like movies, interpretation, yeah, all those things are correct, right? Even newspaper. Sometimes newspapers is not necessarily first-hand sources. Okay, a lot of times you just telling stories of other people, which could make it a secondary source. Okay, well, let's do some poll questions and see how you guys are doing with this. Okay, let me I'm gonna launch the poll. Now, my understanding is that some of you might not be able to see the Zoom poll if you're using certain devices. If you can't see it, well, you can let me know, or you can just do it on your own. But for those of you who could see it, please answer the poll. I'll give you about a minute or so, and then you let me know. All right, so that is 2 minutes. Thank you for everyone who has participated, and you know, if you didn't have a chance to do it this time, you can try it next time. So let's take this up. The most popular answer is C. Then second most popular is A. Let's see which one is the correct answer. Which of the following is an example of deductive reasoning? Okay, so first thing you have to think about in a question like this is, what is the meaning of deductive reasoning? Is it going from specific to general or general to specific? So I'm going to give you a moment to just answer that in your head. Okay, and hopefully you remember deductive reasoning is going from general to specific, right? So let's take a look. All viruses require a host to replicate, right? Because the statement starts with all viruses. So that's like a general statement, right? So this could be the answer. Okay? I'm gonna leave that alone for now. Next one. COVID-19, HPV, Ebola, influenza are viruses. They require a host to replicate. So that sounds like many specific examples, right? Okay, it's like saying, oh, this is $3, that is $3, that is $3. So that is going from specific to general. Not the answer we're looking for. Next one also begins with a general statement. All viruses require a host to replicate. So that could be correct. Last one, COVID-19 is a virus and it requires a host to replicate. Ebola is a virus, therefore it also requires a host to replicate. This is going from one example to another example. There's no, general to specific or specific to general. That's why it is also not the answer. So now we have to compare A and C and see which one is the better answer. So all viruses require a host to replicate. COVID-19 is a virus. It must require a host to replicate. And this sounds very similar, right? Let's see. All viruses require a host to replicate. COVID-19 requires a host to replicate. Therefore, COVID-19 is a virus. So which one is correct? Well, the logic here is not quite sound in C. Okay, I will give you another example and you will see immediately what the problem is. So instead of saying all virus requires a host to replicate, I can say, all birds have wings. Okay, so that's my general statement. Instead of saying virus, I'm saying birds. Instead of saying host to replicate, I'm saying wings. Okay. Then I'm gonna use an example. I'll say bees have wings. Okay. So here it says require a host to replicate, the second part, right? And then the second sentence uses the second part. So that's why I say have wings and have wings. So what's my conclusion according to this structure? Bees have wings. So therefore bees are what? According to this logic, what should I write next? Bees are birds, right? And you know that's not true, right? That's ridiculous, of course, right? So, it's the same kind of flawed logic that caused this to be the incorrect answer, okay? So, in the bird example, it should have been like, something is a bird, therefore it must have wings. So for that reason, A is the correct one, okay? Have I convinced everyone who did not choose A why A is the right answer? Someone has a question? Yeah, go ahead, please. Is that a hand or, oh, sorry, that's a clap icon. Sorry. Yeah. All right, well, you think about this later on when you're studying, and then, you can ask me questions again. Okay, let's try another question here. This one is much easier, okay? You should be able to answer within, half a minute. Go ahead.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Can you please
post this answer on their homepage, or I don't know.
Can I post the answers? I mean,
Yes.
it's in the recordings, right? Okay. So that's probably better, you know, to refer back to it. But just for the record, the first one, the answer for the first one is A. Okay, is A.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, yeah. So a lot of you chose B as the answer, and that would be correct. That is the correct answer. That is a hypothesis, a tentative answer to your question. Let's do one more before we move on. And the correct answer is experiment. Okay, a lot of people chose data as well. Data is what you collect from your experiment and you interpret the data to see what it means. But you know, it's the experiment that we do to test a specific hypothesis. Right, so the answer is D. All right, moving on. Let's go back to our study guide here. Now, I did this already in the lecture recordings, but it's probably worth talking about it again. A lot of people get confused between independent variable and the dependent variable. Okay, so I'm just gonna put it at the end of the document, so when I post it online, you'll be able to see it. Okay, so in an experiment, okay, there are different groups, right? That we are going to be performing the experiment on. We have our control group. Okay, this is usually the group that receives no change and no modification. Okay, no change, no modification. And the purpose of having a control group is to provide a reference to compare with. Right. Usually the control group represent what normal is, and we will take the results from the other group and compare it to control group, and then we will be able to see what kind of changes there are. So the second group in an experiment would be an experimental group, or we can also call it the treated group. Okay, so this one would have some modification. We have a modification. Okay. So everything between the control group and the treated group should be identical, except for one thing. Okay, let's write that down for you. Everything between the control and treated group should be identical, except for one variable. Okay. That one variable that is different, that is called the independent variable. Independent variable. Okay. To remember it, Independent is the one that you are in control of. Okay, that's the one that you deliberately change between the control group and the treated group. You manipulate it, you modify it on purpose. That's the independent variable. Okay, everything else is going to be kept the same except for the independent variable. Okay. So what's the point? What's the purpose? The purpose is to see what happens when you change the independent variable. How will it affect the outcome? Okay, so the outcome that you're looking for, the outcome that you're measuring, the outcome that you're observing, that would be the dependent variable. Okay, so the dependent variable is the variable being measured or observed. Okay. So the question that you're trying to address is, how does changing the independent variable affect the dependent variable? Maybe it doesn't. Maybe it doesn't affect it at all. Right? Then you would expect the same outcome in the control group versus the treated group. Okay. By the way, your first lab, which is the beetroot lab, is heavily related to this lecture. Okay, so all these variables that we're talking about, dependent, independent stuff, you will have to apply in the first lab. Okay, before I move on, any question about independent and dependent variable here?
I'm actually still confused about the whole thing.
Yeah, all right. Let's do a concrete example.
Yeah, I was about saying that.
Sure. So let's say you know we have 2 planes, okay? We have 2 planes. Okay. So that's one plan here. And then that's another plane. Okay. So I want to know what happens if one planes get more light than the other. Okay. So what happens if I expose more light to one plane than the other? Okay, so here this would be my control group. Okay, so control group would get regular amount of light. Okay, so let's say like 6 hours. Okay, 6 hours of light. Okay, and then over here, this is my treated group. Treated group. Okay, so I would give it like 12 hours of light. So in this case, I am in control of how much sunlight each plane gets, right? Do you agree? I am manipulating, I'm deliberately changing the amount of sunlight that each plane is getting. So the amount of sunlight, is that dependent variable or is that independent variable? Let's think about that. You know what? Why don't we do a poll on it? Okay, so that I know what you guys are thinking. My question is, the amount of sunlight, is that A, is that the dependent variable, or is it B, the independent variable? Please let me know what you think. Choose A for dependent, choose B for independent. The amount of sunlight. Anyone else want to try? I only have 12 people answering the question. Okay, last call. Okay, well, looks like a lot of people are still confused. All right. So once again, the independent variable is the one that you are in control of. You can change it. You can decide what is supposed to be. Okay. So the amount of sunlight that you expose the plant to, that is in your control, is it not? You either put the plant out in the sun or you don't. You get to choose that, right? Okay, you get to choose what to do with it. So in this case, the independent variable is the amount of light exposure. Okay, is it 6 hours? Is it 12 hours? You get to decide that. That's the independent variable. Okay, the dependent variable is the one that you will be observing, that you will be measuring, right? So by exposing the plants to different amount of light, you want to measure the length, right? The height of the plant. Height of the plant, right? You cannot control that. You cannot like force the plant to grow taller or not, right? You're just observing it, you're just measuring it. Okay, so for that reason, the dependent variable is the height, whereas the independent variable is the light exposure. Okay. Any question? Can I know where the confusion is so it will help me clear things up with you? Or does that make more sense now?
It makes more sense.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? All right, now that's not it, okay? Listen carefully. Well, let's say after I don't know, like a week of doing this plant is taller. Okay? So how do you know? How do you know for sure? How do you know for certain that the difference in height is actually caused by the difference in sunlight exposure? How do you know is not something else? Well, earlier we wrote this down, right? Everything between the control and the treated group should be identical, except for the independent variable, which means except for the amount of sunlight, everything else between these two plants should be kept the same. We call those things standardized variable. Standardized variable. Everything else must be kept the same. So what else? I mean, what should we keep the same between the two groups? Give me some ideas. Between the control and the treated group, besides the sunlight, which is different, what needs to be the same? Go ahead, Victoria.
The same plant.
I'm sorry, I couldn't quite catch that.
It must be the same plant.
That's right, it must be the same plant. You can't do like lettuce versus whatever, right? Like spinach, okay? It's the same plant. Someone else?
It should have the same soil component.
That's right, same soil. I cannot use Miracle-Gro for one and then use like, Graffle for the other one. Same soil. Another one, please.
Same exposure to like they should be exposed to the same atmosphere, I think.
Same, did you say atmosphere?
Weather condition.
Weather condition, yes. Go ahead, someone else. I saw someone else had unmute. Weather condition. Yeah, go ahead.
The same type of water or water like amount.
Yeah, you don't want to be, watering this one like 3 times a day and the other one, twice a week, right? Has to be same water, same amount of water. Do you understand? Right? So it's a long list. You can keep on going and going, right? Make sure it's the same humidity, same temperature, same location, all those things, right? So if everything else is kept the same, then in the end, you can be certain that any observable difference between the two plants is caused by the sunlight and not anything else. That is very important to understand. Okay. So standardized variable.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, Vincent. I'm sorry. It's
problem. Mhm.
sorry, one sec. Can you just scroll up a little bit just so I missed the note at the top. I just want to.
Yeah. And I will post this right after class. So anything you missed, you will be able to download it afterwards as well. Okay.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So while we're waiting, the purpose, and you should all write this down. Okay. I'm gonna ask you maybe later what is the purpose of standardizing variables. Okay. The purpose of standardizing variable between the groups is so that when we do see a difference in the dependent variable, in this case, the height of the plan, we can be certain that it was caused by the change in the independent variable and nothing else. Okay, let me write that down for you. So over here, right? What is the purpose of standardized variable? Okay. The purpose of standardizing variables is to ensure any differences observed in the independent variable in this case, height of the plan is caused by changes. Observed in the dependent variable, my bad, on the dependent variable, the height of the plan is caused by changes in the independent variable, which is amount of light. Okay.
Okay. Please, can you explain this again?
Which part? The standardized part?
Yeah, the purpose. You said to ensure any difference is observed in the dependent variable.
Right.
Then an example is the height. It was caused by the changes. I really don't get that.
Okay. So let's say we did this experiment and one plan is taller than the other. Okay, that's what you see in the end. After a week of doing this, one plan is taller than the other. So I ask you now, why did one plan got taller than the other? What would you what would you say to me?
Because one was exposed to 12 hours of light.
And the other is only 6 hours, right? Okay. Then I challenge you. I say, hey, how do you know for certain? How do you know it's not because one plant got better soil than the other? What would you say to me?
I'll tell you everything they got was the same plants, the same soil.
Exactly, right? But you wouldn't be able to tell me that unless you make sure that the soil were the same, right?
Yeah.
So by standardizing the variable, by making sure all these things are the same between the two groups, and the only difference is the amount of sunlight, you can say with high confidence that the difference in the height, the dependent variable, is caused only by the amount of sunlight and not anything else, because everything else was the same except for the light. Is that better now?
Yeah, I understand that. Thank you.
Okay. All right, we're gonna do another one here, okay? Let's say I'm gonna make up a scenario that you have not seen before in the lecture. Okay, so let's say this person he likes to run. Okay, so we'll call him Andrew. Andrew likes to run. Okay, and then he has 3 pairs of shoes, running shoes. Okay, they're all brand new. A and B, these are shoes. Okay, and C, and you know he wants to know if he runs better in one of these shoes. Right? So I want you to I'm gonna break you guys into small group just for a couple of minutes, and I want you to talk about what the independent variable would be, what the dependent variable are and is, or what, and then what the standardized variables are. Okay, so independent, dependent, and standardized variable. I'm gonna put you guys into small groups, and then I'm gonna give you like a couple minutes to try. Please do talk to each other, participate. Okay, and when we come back together, we'll talk about it. Okay. Let me see. How do we do this?
Please, can you repeat this again?
Yes. So I want you to, in your groups, talk about how you would go about setting up this test. Okay. So as the scenario is this: Andrew wants to know if he runs better, faster in one of these shoes. Okay. So he has 3 pairs of brand new shoes. Okay. So I want you to talk about what the dependent variable is, what the independent variable is, and what the standardized variable would be in order for him to figure it out. Okay. So let's see. We have 20. Okay, let's go with 5 people, 4 people per group. Okay, so you guys are gonna go into your groups and you're gonna talk about it, okay? And then I will bring you guys back in a bit. And go ahead. You just have to accept the invitation and click join. Oops, sorry, that didn't quite work. Let me try again. Oh boy, that did not work at all. Just give me a second. I gotta reset this thing, and hopefully it will work again. Sorry, something ran wrong. It didn't quite work out. I'm gonna try that one more time. Okay, sorry. Let's go again. Try one more time. Go ahead. Okay, I'm just gonna give you another minute or so. Please wrap up what you are talking about, and we'll come back together.
Hi, I keep coming back here. I don't know what is wrong.
Oh, that's okay, Victoria. We'll take it up. Sometimes these tech is a little bit flimsy.
Okay, because I was in group 3, then later I came to group 5.
Yeah. You had a chance to talk a little bit about it though, maybe?
I was just talking about it in grade 5 before I left again.
Get switched? Okay, yeah, yeah. Sorry about that. Okay, hopefully all of you are back. Anybody want to share their results? What's the dependent variable in this case? Or you know what? Let's start with the one that you can control, that independent variable. What would it be?
The independent is the different shoes that they're going to be wearing.
That's right. So the which shoe to wear? Which shoes to wear? Okay, that's what Zuad said as well in the chat. Very good. What about the dependent variable?
Depends on how many, like, if he has too many clothes on, like the weight.
Is that what we're trying to measure? Is that what we're trying to observe? By changing the different
Let me
shoes?
try.
Yeah,
Let me
go
try.
ahead.
Maybe
Like how far he can run with it with the shoe.
Okay, how far? That's interesting. Let me
Yeah.
keep that in mind first. Anyone else have a slightly different suggestion?
The speed that he runs in each shoe.
Right. So both is valid. Okay. He can time how far he can run. He can time how fast he can run. I think I'm gonna go with the speed. Okay. How fast can he run? Okay. Because how far is a little bit harder to measure. Like, do I run until I drop down? Do I run until I'm
Okay.
out of breath? You know what I mean? Okay. Or do I time how far I can run within an hour, for example, right? So the both is okay, but I'm gonna for easier understanding, I'm gonna say how fast can he run? Okay, so
I was
good.
I was gonna say foot size because like we're not even sure if the 3 shoes or 2 shoes are his size. You know.
But that wouldn't be the dependent variable, right? That's not something that we're gonna be measuring, right? That
Yeah.
would be more like a standardized
Standard.
variable.
Yeah,
Okay.
standardized variable.
All right, so we're gonna do standardize. Did I spell it right? Standardized. No, sorry. Standardized variable. See, that's why my parents told me to work harder for English. Standardized variable. Help me out here. Okay, so I heard people say the clothes that he wear, right? Clothing, right? You don't
Yeah,
want
the
to be bulky on
clothes.
one day. Yeah, and another one, sorry. Go ahead.
He would run on the same track, the same distance.
Yeah, same path. Okay, same distance.
The shoe.
Francesca, you have another one. I saw you have your hand up. Yeah. Francisca, sorry, Francisca. Yeah. Okay. Maybe another one, another person.
same time.
Same time. What do you mean by same time?
Like if he's gonna go run, like.
Oh,
say
like
for
same
example-
time of the day? You mean like morning every day? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because you don't want to do like night versus day, right? Okay. So same time of the day.
Size of shoe, part of it.
I'm sorry, I couldn't catch that. One more time, please.
It's same size of shoe, part of it.
Yeah, sure, right? You don't want to wear oversized and too tight, right? So same shoe size. Okay, so you guys start to understand, right? So everything needs to oh, someone said, why would he buy shoes that don't fit him? I actually have shoes that don't fit me because they were on sale, right? You can't beat sale, right? It's okay to be a little bit loose. Anyways, so these are the things that needs to be kept constant so that, you know, if he does run faster or slower, wearing different shoes, we know is caused by the shoes and not anything else. Okay, and another standardized variables that you might think about is you know, he probably want to rest a little bit between the runs. Okay, you don't want to run on Monday and then Tuesday and then Wednesday, right? Because if you're slower on Wednesday, maybe you're just tired, right? Maybe you just fatigue, right? You want to maybe have like a week of rest in between or something like that. Okay, so are we better with this independent, dependent, and standardized business? Any other questions before we move on? I guess so, but I think that okay. Right. Okay, I'm gonna give you like a quick 5-minute break just to recoup, and when we come back in 5 minutes, 1:45, we will we'll do some more practices together. Okay, see you in a bit. Hello, it's me again. Let's keep going. So let's go back to some of these questions here. The next thing that we should talk about is the experiments by Rady and Pasteur. Okay, so answer each of the following questions related to Rady's experiment. So explain the spontaneous generation hypothesis. And again, I keep on saying this, but you will find much more detailed explanation in the lecture recordings. So make sure you do spend some time watching those. So spontaneous generation. Basically, the idea of spontaneous generation states that living things came from non-living things. Okay, living things came from non-living things. So like, if you put a piece of meat outside, then, after a few days, maggots start to form on the surface of the meat. So that's the observation that people made in the past. And, they thought, based on that observation, living things, the maggot, must have came from non-living things, a piece of meat. What observation was Rady's hypothesis based on? It's basically what I just said. When a piece of meat is left outside on a hot summer day, for example, flies and maggots will appear on the meat. Okay, that is the theory. What the theory of spontaneous generation was based on. Okay, so how did he do an experiment to test this? Okay, so he of course had 3 jars. 1 jar, 2nd jar, 3rd jar. Okay, so he put meat in all of them. Now to standardize the variable, it probably has to be the same kind of meat, right? Okay, same meat, same cut, same size, same age, perhaps. Okay, so there are your 3 pieces of meat. So the first one is an open jar. Open jar, no modification. That's our control, right? Control. And then you have 2 treated groups. Does anybody remember what the second group was? What kind of modification he made to the jar? What does the note say?
Maybe a sealed jar.
Yeah, so he sealed one of them, completely sealed. Okay, so that is sealed jar. And what's the other one? What's the third one? Anyone?
Ones with holes.
Yeah, a netting, right? Okay, so this is very small netting. Jar with netting. Okay, so those are the 3 groups right here. Now, before we talk about the results, let's go through the independent variable. What is the independent variable in this experimental setup?
The meat and the type of meat.
The meat and the type of meat. Okay. Anyone else? Good try. And anyone else have a different answer? Independent variable. What are we in control of in this case? What are the one thing that we decide should be different?
The fact that one is open, sealed, and the other one is netted.
Yeah, so we could say the type of cover, right? The
Yeah.
type of cover used on the jar. Right? Is it no cover? Is it sealed cover? Is it, netting? What about the dependent variable? What are we trying to see in this case? What are we trying to observe? By changing the type of covering, what are we trying to observe?
If flies and maggots will appear.
That's right. So this would be the presence of flies and maggots. Okay. Now, you should keep in mind that everything else should be kept constant, right? So, the same type of meat, you probably want to put these jars in the same place, right? You want to expose them, leave them outside for the same amount of time. Yeah, go ahead.
No, at that same time, I'll just,
Yeah, that's right. Good. We want it to be the same, the jar should be made of the same material, so on and so forth. Okay. So what were the results? Now, if you saw the recordings, you probably would remember. Okay, let's say this is group one. Group one, you would have flies all over the place, flies. And then maggots would be crawling on them, right? Okay, let's make the maggots bigger. There we go. Okay, so this would be maggots plus flies on the meat. Okay, it's a pretty gross sight. Number two here is the seal jars. So no maggots, no flies. Okay, it's probably smell inside, but there will be no maggots, no flies. And then for number three, anybody remember what happens on number three? Rather than me telling you, does anybody recall? Anyone else in the class? Someone who hasn't spoken yet? Don't be shy. We're gonna spend 14 weeks together. Might as well get to know each other's voice. What happens in group three? That's okay. So group three, you will also have flies, and then you will have some maggots, but then they would be on the netting, right? Nothing on the meat itself. Okay, so maggots and flies on the netting. Okay. So based on this, what conclusion can he make? Well, meat does not produce maggots and flies, right? So therefore, spontaneous generation is rejected. Because if meat does create maggots and flies, you should also see them in this sealed jar, right? But you don't. So, we know that the maggots actually came from the flies and not the meat itself. Right? So you look at something like that, you're like, isn't that obvious, right? Shouldn't we know about it, just by common sense? Well, remember this happened like in the 1800s, right? So like, people weren't always as knowledgeable about these things as we are now, right? What is considered as common knowledge nowadays is not necessarily common knowledge back then, right? Okay, so this was an experiment to disprove the concept of spontaneous generation. Okay, so there is also the Pasteur experiment. Now, we don't have time to go through all of it. I will post the answer to these questions online afterwards, so you can go through it yourself. But you can also try to answer some of these questions after watching the recordings. Okay. All right, let's move on to some of the longer answer questions over here. Let's do this one. You are the lead scientist in a study to determine if taking multivitamin supplement reduces the risk of a cold infection. Okay, so let's talk about this one. Write a hypothesis for your experiment. Okay, so what would your hypothesis be? Okay, I'll give you a minute to write your own, and then if anyone wants to share, please do that. Okay, I'm just give you a minute to do that. You can type your hypothesis in the chat box if you wish, okay? I'm gonna just go to the end here. What's the hypothesis? Anyone?
Using a multivitamin may reduce the risk of catching a cold infection.
Right. So taking multivitamin will reduce the risk of a cold infection. Okay. Make sure be specific on the test, on the quiz. If I ask you to write an hypothesis, okay, don't be vague. Like, like it will reduce the risk. What's it? The risk of what? Okay, so you try to be explicit. Okay, taking multivitamin will reduce the risk of a cold. It's okay if you say taking multivitamin will not reduce the risk of cold as well. Okay, either way, doesn't matter. You just decide what you want to what your position is. Okay, so B, what is the independent variable? Independent variable. And then dependent variable. Okay, please help me out.
Multivitamin.
What about the multivitamin?
It's the independent.
Yeah, because
Yes, but
The independent variable is multivitamin. You decide whether to take it or not.
that's right, to take it or not, right? So we can't just say multivitamin, although I do understand where you came from. So independent variable, you want to say to take multivitamin or not. Okay, good. Dependent variable, it would be catching a cold or not. Is that okay? Do you guys understand why they are the way they are? Okay, so what group should you involve in your experiment? Okay, we probably have like a control group. Right? So what would the control group be given? What should we give them, huh? Should we give them vitamin or no vitamin?
Vitamin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else? Does everybody think we should give them vitamin, control group? Or should I not give them vitamin? Or does it matter? Okay. Manish say no vitamins for the control. Yeah, no vitamin. Okay, control is where is the control is no change, right? No modification. That's the reference. That's the baseline that we want to compare it to, right? Okay, so for a control group, no vitamin. Okay, and we need to have a treated group. Treated group. Okay, these are the people who will receive vitamin. Okay, should I have a third group here? What do you think, huh? Should I have a third group?
Yeah.
What's the third group? What should we call them?
Placebo.
That's the placebo. That's right. What is the placebo group? What do we need them for?
Just for neutrality, I think.
What does it mean by neutrality?
Like to see like if they're like faking, like you know what I mean? I don't know how to
Right.
explain it.
Yeah, so I mean you explained it pretty well. Okay, so to minimize bias, right? To minimize psychological effects. So these people will be receiving a placebo, a sugar pill, right? Okay, something that has nothing to do with co-infection, but you just give them something. Okay, so those would be the three groups. Are we okay? Hopefully you're okay with that. Give me 1 second. Okay, next one. What's the next question? What factors must be kept constant between the various groups in your experiment? Okay, so I want you to type that out for me. Give me 1 second. I am just gonna share this with you. Oh, there's too many things going on in my screen. 1 second. Is it screen one? Screen one. Okay. All right. So you can go here. I will post this in the chat box. Okay. So you can click on that, and it will ask you to list 3 standardized variable. Okay. So you can either visit this web page yourself and then type in the code, or you can just click on the link that I have provided for you in the chat box. And I want you to tell me 3 standardized variables for our experiment, the vitamin experiment. Okay. I'm gonna hide some of the people's answer so you can come up with your own. I will just block it with this window. Are you guys able to access it? The site, I mean. Okay, so I have 2 answers here. Very good. So again, I'm asking you to click on the link in the chat box, or you can type in the address yourself and you tell me 3 standardized variables for our experiment of testing the whether the vitamin will reduce the risk of catching a cold. I only have 4 responses. Are you guys having trouble with the link? Can you let me know? Or like, are you just not doing it? Yeah, go ahead. Francisca, I keep on seeing your hand going up. Do you have a question, or you just click on that accidentally? Okay. All right, I have 7 answers here. Because of time, I think we will stop there, but let's see what people said. Okay, people are having happy face here. Okay, same age. Yes. Okay, we want them to be same age. We don't want to put the old people in the no vitamin group and then put the young and strong people in the vitamin group, because the results is not going to be reliable that way, right? So we want everybody to have the same age. Standardized variable, a patient with a cold flu. I'm not sure what that means. Okay, we presumably want to start with all healthy individuals. Okay, no one in any of the groups should be sick to begin with. Otherwise, it's hard to gauge, right? Amount of vitamin consumed. Okay, this is a good one. Okay, this is a common answer that people make, but it's incorrect. Okay. The amount of vitamin consumed is not a standardized variable. A standardized variable is a variable that must be kept the same for all the groups. Remember, the placebo group and the control group, they are not taking any vitamins. So, amount of vitamin consumed is not a standardized variable for all the groups, okay? Same problem with this one. Temperature, like what do you mean by temperature? Like body temperature, like the temperature of the like the environment temperature? Not quite sure. Okay, environment is correct. Okay, you want these people to be having similar environmental exposure. Right? You don't want to put all the healthcare worker in one group and all the office worker in another group, right? Otherwise, it would be skewed, right? You want to have the same mix of people in each of the group. Let's see what else there are. Not sure what you mean by metabolism. Gender, yeah. Weight. So you want to have same males and female ratio in all of the groups and so on. Weight, okay. BMI, someone said the body mass index, very good. Okay, do you understand why some of these doesn't work and why the other ones are okay? Yeah, race, ethnicity, that's also another good one. Do we have any question? All right, so that's that. Let's move on to the next part here. Okay, a farmer wants to determine if feeding cows with high protein diet would increase milk yield. Write a hypothesis for this. So, you can say increasing protein diet will increase the milk yield, or you can say it will not. Again, you just have to state your position and write a hypothesis that way. Okay, describe how the experiment should be set up to test this hypothesis. You should know by now, right? We should have some cows with regular protein diet, and then we should have some cows with high protein diet. And then you would measure the milk yield at the end, right? Now, the important question here is it's part C, right? Is a placebo needed in this experiment? Okay. What do you guys think? Do we need a placebo for something like this? Let's do a poll. If you think we need a placebo for this experiment, please choose A. If you think we do not need a placebo, please choose B. I think I'm losing some of you because of the long lectures. A lot of you are not responding anymore, but that's okay. We will just end the poll, and thank you for those who have participated. 7 of you said no, we don't need a placebo, and 3 of you said yes, we need a placebo. Can someone explain to me why we don't need a placebo? For people who chose no, why do we not need a placebo?
So I chose no because I feel. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay, so the farmer just wants to determine if feeding the cows high protein diet. Okay, so it's just to feed one set of the cows with the normal protein diet he has been feeding them.
Mhm.
Then the other set is just to add to the protein diet. So I don't think that there is need for placebo, like one should be neutral or whatever.
Okay, yeah. Thank you for sharing. Anyone else want to add to that, maybe? Okay, so the purpose of a placebo is to minimize bias, right? Okay. So what do I mean by that? Well, sometimes my daughter, the younger one, she fell and then, she has a small scrape on her knees. And then, she gets really upset. It hurts a lot. I can't eat. I can't sleep. All these problems start to come up, right? Okay. But as soon as I put a Band-Aid on, everything is right as rain. Okay. She feels just fine and started running around again. Now, did the Band-Aid actually, do anything substantial that makes her, actually feel better? Probably not. Okay. Okay. But psychologically, right, having a Band-Aid there, not seeing the blood, right, makes her feel better, right? So, to account for these psychological effects, to account for these bias in a person, we need to have a placebo. Okay. So, when a person say they are having jet lag, right? Like the example I use in class, they're having a jet lag, and then you give them a pill and you say, this is going to help you sleep. Okay. And then they feel better afterwards. They tell you, oh yeah, taking the pills actually helped me sleep. Right. But how do you know it's the pill that's helping them sleep? Maybe it's just the act of telling them, taking this will help you sleep, that cause them to be able to sleep better, right? And that's why we need a placebo, okay, to eliminate psychological effects. Now, we don't need a placebo. That's the answer for this one. We do not need a placebo when we are not dealing with humans, okay? The cow's not going to lie to you. The cow doesn't know you're doing an experiment on them. They're not going to be like, oh, I'm going to hold out on my milk because I know you're trying to trick me with the high protein diet. They're not going to do that, right? Okay, they don't know to be biased and stuff like that. So that's why there is no need to include a placebo when it comes to non-human experiments. Okay. Let's see what else are there. Okay, so this is another thing that we talked about in class, right? In the PowerPoint slides, is the jet lag thing I was telling you about. So the control group would receive no sleeping pills. The placebo would receive like a sugar pill. Right? So you tell these people, you take the pill, it will help you sleep. Okay, it will fix your jet lag. Okay? But it's actually like a fake pill. And then this is the group that actually takes the experimental jet lag pill. So based on this result, right, do you think the new pill is effective? Right? Does taking this drug actually reduce your jet lag symptoms? Right? What do you think? Sorry, what did you say? Sorry?
No.
No. Okay. And Manish also say no. And that would be correct. Okay. And here's the reason. If you look at the control group, right, people who take no pills, 70% of them experience symptoms of jet lag. If they take the experimental pill, the sleeping pill, the jet lag reduced to only 40% of the people. Okay. But is it actually taking the pill that helps? Or is it the fact that you're telling them taking something, anything, would help? Well, that's why we have to look at the placebo, right? The placebo over here does as well, performs as well as the actual experimental group, right? The people who are not actually taking anything, the people who you are just telling them they're taking something, also improve in terms of their jet lag symptoms. So why should we give them the pill, right? You could just give them anything and tell them it's going to help and it will help. So based on this result, the experimental drug is not effective. Okay, it's not effective. When the placebo group and the actual experimental group performs equally well compared to the control group, that's a sign that tells you it is not working. Okay, so please review this concept in the lecture. There is another graph in the lecture notes that shows you what kind of results are expected for a drug that actually works. Okay, so that's it. I mean, there are some fill in the blanks, but I will post the answer and you can check it yourself. And so next Monday, you will watch the recordings for lecture 2. Everything is posted already. I'm just going to show you one more time where things are, so there's no confusion, okay? You will, I will post a link as well, but you will go to table of contents, and then you will go to lectures, and then you will do lecture 2. And then here are the lecture recordings, part 1, part 2, and part 3. So you have to watch all that before you come to live session on Wednesday again. Okay, so remember there's no live class on Monday. You just watch these things on your own. Is this a marked assignment or just a like what do you mean by this? Like you mean like this as in this, like the study guide? Sorry, I'm answering a private message. What we filled out? Yeah, no, this you don't have to hand this in, guys. Okay, like this this study guide thing that we just did. That's for you to study. Okay, you should fill out the rest that we didn't do, and then I will post the answer for you to compare it with. Okay, so Monday you don't join the class. You don't go on the Zoom. Okay, you just watch the recordings. In fact, the recordings are already available, right? So like I said, since the beginning of the semester is not as busy, you should probably stay ahead of the schedule, okay? Watch some of these things, you know, over the weekend or something, okay? And then when we come on Tuesday, we will take up the study guide for lecture 2, okay? So study guide for lecture 2 is right here, right? You see? Study guide. Do you understand? Okay. Now, another thing before you guys go, is this. After each class, I will post like a debrief, right? And this is the tutorial archive. I will I will update it after every class. So if you click on that, it will take you to the to this document, right? And you see if you missed the orientation, you can watch that later on. And then today's class, scientific method, I will also post a link, right? So every time after our live session, I will post a recording. So, you know, if you missed the live session because of, you know, illness or whatever other responsibility that you might have, then you can just watch it later, okay? Or if you want to check out the answers again for the study guide or for the polls, you can do that as well, okay? So that's it. I will see you all next Wednesday. Email me if you have any question. All right. Thanks again. Have a good one. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.